candle. Take one more.
To be totally honest, I had no idea what sexual orientation was. I didn't even know that term. The only conception I had about homosexuality was that it was guys who wear tube socks, have mustaches, porn stashes, let's be honest, and hang out on street corners and kiss. No way would I want to associate myself with that. I did have to go through a process where later on I reiterated that prayer with this question in mind about, is God okay with me being gay? Just okay. And immediately, it was an immediate, of course. It was almost like comical that I was asking. 5 years later of therapy, I was able to get to a point of being able to say, okay, I'm gay. I had an experience where I was sitting with a group of other gay Mormons, and in that, a particular guy was sharing how he had just survived his 5th suicide attempt. I literally felt a sensation of sort of like somebody had pulled a plug in my foundation that was all I thought was cement, and it was turned out to be sand, and just the sand drained out in that very moment. And I felt like I can't sit and hold space and feel somebody else's pain without further light and knowledge on this. And I, again, sort of felt like that question clawed its way up out of me of, can I pursue a relationship? And it felt like, again, like I had reached a new level of the biggest question I'd ever taken to God. I felt a little ashamed for having to ask, but yet feeling like I've reached some sort of level of rock bottom where I can't not ask. And I felt, again, a sense of clarity of yes, that if that's part of my need to be a spiritually grounded person and to be able to operate and serve in the community of LGBT Mormons and saints, that would be okay. I had no idea how to live my way into that answer. So great, an answer, some clarity, direction. How the hell do I do that? To this day, I'm not in a relationship. I don't spend any time pursuing a relationship, and I feel sort of guilty about that sometimes. I'm gonna choose to sit in the tension between knowing God affirms me like that, choosing not to engage in a relationship, but then see what that does to me. There are few things I feel, again, on the cellular level, conviction-wise, about all this stuff about gay and Mormon and church, and but that that there is promise in paradoxes like that. I am convicted because I've seen it bear fruits in my life, spiritual level, that I believe, at least, I could not have experienced any other way than had I intentionally, willfully chosen to sit in that tension.
Most of the leaders of the church, I think, do not understand the science and the biology of homosexuality. Some do. I think some have informed themselves, but many are still living with older ideas.
Even the church, which said in its website, mormonsandgays.org, this is not a choice, immediately began hedging and saying, well, it may not be a choice, but you're going to be held accountable for what you didn't choose to be.
That it's even a debate whether or not it's a choice is kind of crazy that we're still talking about that.
In 2011, I conducted a study with Dr. Bill Bradshaw of Brigham Young University to determine the optimal outcomes for LGBT Mormons. We surveyed 1,612 LGBT Mormons, and we were able to divide them into 4 main identity groups. The first group was those who denied their sexuality, the ones who just pretended to not be gay or found a way to convince themselves that they weren't gay even though they were. The second group were those who compartmentalized, who publicly would present as heterosexual, but then they had their own private lives behind the scenes. Those 2 identity groups fared the worst in terms of depression, sexual identity distress, self-esteem, quality of life, etc. The third group were those who just abandoned their religion altogether and left the church. They definitely had better outcomes than those first two groups. What surprised us was this fourth group. In this fourth group, these were LGBT Mormons who found a way to be openly LGBT in their congregations and to remain active in the church. But what we were able to find was that those who did not have to choose between their religiosity and their sexuality, but they could integrate them together in a lived LDS experience, had the lowest depression, the lowest sexual identity distress, the highest self-esteem, and the highest quality of life.
My name is John Gustav Rathal, and I'm a gay Mormon. I have been married to my husband, Euron, for over 25 years, and I am active in my LDS ward. It was 14 when I knew that I was gay. I looked the word homosexual up in the dictionary, and I was like, yep, that's what I am. And shortly thereafter, I guess maybe when I was 15, 16, I read Miracle of Forgiveness by Spencer W. Kimball.
Every form of homosexuality is sin. There is no halfway.
Like I thought, okay, so if I'm just really super faithful, like if I do everything that the Lord asks me to do, that this will be taken from me and I'll be able to be married in the temple. And I served an honorable mission in France and Switzerland. Was a Kimball Scholar at Brigham Young University. And I came back from my mission, and my BYU bishop put his arm around me and said, well, so now you finish your mission, your number one duty is to get married and start having children. And that began a downward spiral for me. And by the end of my junior year, I had a suicide plan. That summer, I had a profound spiritual experience. And in this spiritual experience, God spoke to me. And I had not been praying for some time. I didn't feel as worthy to pray. And I felt the Spirit inviting me to pray. And I knelt down and I said, God, if you want me to pray, I have to be real with you. And I came out to God. I said, I'm gay. And God said to me, I know you from your inmost being. Of course you're gay. I know that you're gay. And I love you. And I felt this complete and total love and acceptance from God. I wrote a letter to my parents and I said, I'm resigning from the church. And that was shattering. It was heartbreaking for my parents. I ended up spending time in a Roman Catholic monastery to explore celibacy and what that meant and to see if that was the right thing for me. And I took God's direction to me seriously. He said, consider all your options. So I considered celibacy very seriously. I dated women and I, made the college try at that. And it was clear to me by the end of this discernment process that the right thing for me was a relationship with a man. And I met my husband in 91. So we built a life together, and we had a lot of the challenges that any couple has in trying to build a life together. And after we'd been together for about 13 years, I felt the Spirit again saying, it's time for you to come home. It's time for you to come back to the LDS church. And I said, they won't accept me. They don't want me. Like, why would you tell me to go someplace where they don't want me? And so I had an ongoing argument with God for about 2 months. At that point, I realized two things. One, I could do this. And two, if I didn't do it, I was going to lose the Spirit. Because if you feel that prompting and the Spirit is saying, do this, you need to do it if you want to keep the Spirit. And so I thought, I want the Spirit in my life. I want this peace. So it was scary. And it took me about another month after I promised God I would do this. It took me about another month to get up the courage. And I had this journey that God had been with me on, and I knew that I was, that I was okay with God and that I was with the person that I was supposed to be with. And I was like, how does that work? Like, I know the church is true, but the church says this. and that doesn't fit with what I know is true in my personal life, ultimately I can't reconcile it. I can't deny that there's a conflict, and I can't personally reconcile it. All I know is I have these two truths in my life, and I hold them both. And I trust that things will work out. We need to come to a place of true unity and love. And when we're in that place, then we'll be ready for whatever the Lord has to reveal to us about this. So from my point of view, there's a time that's going to require some patience on our part.
Doing outreach amongst LGBT Mormons after the policy felt like working in a tsunami. And going to church on Sunday, I started to become very depressed and feeling kind of hopeless about the possibility for the church to move in a different direction at all. It's pretty devastating. But then my husband's work ended up taking us for 5 months to West Africa. And all of a sudden, church on Sunday, I show up and my whole ward is Black. I'd never experienced that as a Mormon. And that Sunday, 5th Sunday, it was a combined priesthood relief society meeting. And so all the adults in the ward were there. And the church had produced this sort of whiteboard animation with all of the characters being in traditional African clothing with, African features, all like lovingly, gently, tenderly, warmly inviting African members of the church to receive all the blessings of the temple. And I sat through that and just, I had to try to keep myself composed. I just wept. It's like 40 years ago, this was said to be impossible.
I remember at one point saying to God, I don't need to be in the highest degree of the celestial kingdom. I just want to be in your presence because I love you. And the Lord's response to me was, I love you and I will take care of you. And so I know that regardless of what happens, whether I'm rebaptized in this life or whether it doesn't happen until the next life, I don't know. But, I believe it's going to be within my lifetime.
I've always had hope. I've never, ever felt like, okay, I've had enough of this, enough. Because each year I'm in the church, it gets better. Not worse, better.
If you love LGBT people and you want the church to be a loving place for LGBT people, then you can't leave the church and expect that to happen. Like, you have to be willing to be there and love and be, you are the church, right? Like, a lot of people talk about the church as if it's them and as if I, a baptized member, a believing member, a testimony-bearing member of the church, am not the church. No, you are the church. So can the church be a loving place for LGBT people? Well, you tell me. Do you love LGBT people, and are you the church?
And so that's why I say there is promise to the inconvenience. There's something of value to it. And so by highlighting it, I think it is a good thing to say, like, hey, yeah, religion, the practice of religion is entirely inconvenient. It's supposed to be.
So do I hate my brother or my sister because they don't understand? No. I want to love them into understanding. I want to have a relationship with them that I will cherish for eternity. That's the relationship that I want with every member of the church. And so I don't care how much shit you throw at me. I am here. I want to be there with them. I want us to be together over there, and we will be together over there if we can learn how to be together with each other here.